Good afternoon, students. Today we'll be doing this story, Chinese Statue by Jeffrey Archer. Chinese Statue by Jeffrey Archer. The little Chinese statue was the next item to come under the auctioneer. What do you mean by auctioneer? Who is an auctioneer? Auctioneer is a person who is responsible for conducting the auctions. And what is an auction? What happens in an auction? In an auction, there are commodities or things which are put up for sale. And then we have bidders. And who are the bidders? Bidders are the buyers. Right? You must have seen these auction scenes in the television, in movies. Different things are kept at for auction, and then there are a group of buyers. The people, normally there's artifacts and collectibles and jewelry and all these expensive items are normally sold in an auction. Right? So, the people are there, those people are known as bidders, the buyers, the prospective buyers are known as bidders, right? And then what happens in an auction, the minimum amount of that particular thing. Suppose I am selling this mobile phone, then I will fix the minimum amount, although mobile phone will not be sold in an auction, right? So suppose I am selling this mobile phone because this mobile phone was used by some great person in the past. So what will happen? I will this will be my item which has to be auctioned, and the person who is conducting the auction, like I am the person in this case, so I'll be the auctioneer, and you people are what? Bidders. Now I fix 2,000 rupees as the minimum price. The minimum price is decided at for 2,000 rupees. So now the bidders are going to speak any amount which is more than 2,000 rupees. Right? Like one bidder says 2010, 2020 and so on. This will go. So that is the bid. Right? And the highest bid gets the highest bidder gets the commodity. Right? So that is the auction. So this is what happens in the auction. And auctioneer's hammer, what does the auctioneer do with the hammer? He strikes it on the table 3 times. And that when the hammer is strikes, it means that this good has been sold. Right? So this was what was happening with the story opens. A little Chinese statue was the next item to come under the auctioneer's hammer. So there were a lot of things which were to be auctioned, and one commodity out of them was a Chinese statue. A very small Chinese statue was there, and it was to be auctioned. It was the next item to come under the auctioneer's hammer. Lot 103. So this was the number allotted to that Chinese statue. Lot 103 was those quiet murmurings that always precede the sale of a masterpiece. So the moment this item came, right? The moment this item arrived at the auctioneer's table, and the bidders, they got a glimpse of that item. They were able to see that Chinese statue. What happened? What started happening? There were murmurings to be heard. Means the bidders, they started discussing amongst themselves. They started talking about the Chinese statue. And this is what happens whenever there is a masterpiece to be auctioned. Right? So we can know from this line that this statue was kind of a masterpiece, not any normal statue, not any normal Chinese statue. So the murmuring started. Murmuring means all the whispering started amongst the bidders. They started talking amongst themselves the moment they saw the Chinese statue. The auctioneer's assistant held up the delicate piece of ivory for the packed audience. Packed means a lot of people were there. The hall where this auction was being conducted, it was packed with people. Very congested place. Means a lot of bidders were there. Packed audience to admire while the auctioneer glanced around the room to be sure he knew where the serious bidders were seated. So the auctioneer had an assistant, and what that assistant did, he just held up the Chinese statue so that the people, the prospective buyers, can have a look at the Chinese statue. And then In the meantime, what was the auctioneer doing? The auctioneer was trying to find out the group of people who were actually very serious about buying this Chinese statue. See, everyone present in the auction is not there to buy, right? So he was looking here and there, trying to figure out where the group of serious bidders they were sitting. And I told you who is a bidder. The person who offers to pay a certain price to buy any commodity which is being sold in an auction. I studied my catalogue and read the detailed description of the piece. And in the meantime, what did the author do? He studied. The narrator, what did he do? When this Chinese statue came there, he started reading the details which were given in the catalogue. So catalogue, what is a catalogue? The catalogue is a, you can say, list of all the commodities which are which are about to be auctioned. It contains the details of all the commodities which are being auctioned, so that the bidders they get some idea about that particular thing. So what did the narrator do? The narrator started reading the catalog and read the detailed description of the piece. And he read the detailed description of the piece of that Chinese statue in the catalog. And what was known of its history. And everything about his history and things which were mentioned about his history, he just started reading it. The statue had been, now a description of the statue has been given in the next paragraph. The statue had been purchased in Halichuan in 1871. So the statue which was being auctioned now, this statue was purchased from which place? Halichuan. This is a place in China, right? It is a Chinese statue, so we obviously know that the origin of this statue must be somewhere in China. So the statue has been purchased in Halichuan in 1871 and was referred to as what? The Sotheby's. Sotheby's, who are the Sotheby's? Sotheby's is a British founded company. Now it's a multinational. We have Sotheby's in India also. Sotheby's India also we have. So Sotheby's are, they were originally founded in Britain. Now they have their offices in different countries. So they are in MNC now. So it's a multinational company. And these are the Sotheby's are the world's largest, one of the largest brokers you can say. Largest brokers in fine and decorative art, jewelry, so and other types of collectibles are being auctioned by the Sotheby's. So that is the name of that MNC which conducts these auctions. Quaintly describe the property of a gentleman. So this was the description given about the statue, that it is the property of a gentleman, means someone who is very respectable, who occupies this Chinese statue is currently the property of someone who occupies a very respectable place in the society, usually meaning that some member of the aristocracy. And property of a gentleman means that he should be some member of the aristocracy. What do you mean by aristocracy? First tell me the meaning of quaintly. Quaintly means in a very attractive manner. So the Sotheby's had given a very attractive description of the statue. And what was written about the statue? That this statue which was bought in 1871 in Halichuan belonged to a gentleman. And property of a gentleman meant, what was the meaning of the property of the gentleman? It meant that it belonged to some member of the aristocracy. Aristocracy means a person with a noble birth. Right? When nobility is transferred from one generation to another, it becomes hereditary. Right? So a person belonging to nobility. Again, the high class of the society. So that is aristocracy. So somebody who is belonging to the high class of the society, this statue has come from that family. Did not wish to admit that he was having to sell off one of the family heirlooms. Heirlooms, what is an heirloom? So heirloom is a kind of a very valuable object. It may not be valuable in the monetary sense of terms, but it is something which is Like all these royal families had some family heirlooms, right? Which was something which transferred from one generation to the next one. Like Khandani Amanat kind of a thing, right? So it was not to be sold. The successors of one generation who received that heirloom, the offsprings of one generation who received that heirloom, they were not supposed to sell it. Why? Because that was something which was related to the prestige of their family. Right? It became kind of a tradition that this is being transferred. The father transferred it to the son, and then the son to his son. So this is how that particular commodity was transferred. So this Chinese statue was also kind of a heirloom, family heirloom. So normally it is a valuable object which is transferred, which belongs to the family, and it has passed on from one generation to another for a long period of time, and it is supposed to be transferred to the upcoming generation, right? So that is the meaning of a family heirloom. So that person, the person who belonged to the nobility or the person who belonged to the very high class, his name was not mentioned. Means the owner of that Chinese statue, his name was kept anonymous. Why? Because he didn't want to reveal his identity as he was forced to sell that family heirloom. It was considered, it will not be considered as something very good in the market. Right? So it will be kind of humiliating or insulting for the person that belonging to such a high class, and he is now forced to auction something which belonged to his family from ages. So that is why his name was not there. Did not wish to admit that he was having to sell off one of his family heirlooms, because he did not want to admit in front of the public at large that he is forced to sell his family heirloom, and so his name was kept a secret. I wondered if having to sell, I wondered if that was the case on this occasion, and decided to do some research to discover what had caused the little Chinese statue to find its way into the auction rooms on that Thursday morning over 100 years later. So the narrator became very curious about this Chinese statue. So he wanted to find the entire history of that Chinese statue, what happened, what went wrong that this Chinese statue came to this auction room on one fine Thursday morning. Right? That what caused this little Chinese statue to find its way? What was the reason that this Chinese statue came to this, was finally forced to enter this auction room after 100 years? Right? So he wanted to know the entire history in detail. So what happened? Lot number 103 declared the auctioneer. What am I to bid for this magnificent example of? So the auctioneer started after the bidders, they had a good look of the Chinese statue. The auctioneer started speaking that what is the price? What price should I fix for this magnificent example of? So from here we go. The narrator has started describing the history of the Chinese statue, the origin of the Chinese statue, and how the Chinese statue covered his journey from China to finally ending up in that auction. Okay, so from here the description has been started. So the story goes into a kind of flashback about the origin of the Chinese statue. So this was going on, but the narrator, he was busy finding out the details of the Chinese statue. So then he has given a description of the entire detail of the Chinese statue. Sir Alexander Heathcote, as well as being a gentleman, was an exact man. So the story starts. The story of the Chinese statue, it starts from Sir Alexander Heathcote, right? And Sir, who was Sir Alexander Heathcote? He was a gentleman and he was an exact man also. Exact man means that he was a very precise man. Means he was a very accurate man. He believed in precision. He believed in minute details of everything. That is the meaning of exact man. Right? So kind of very disciplined and wanted everything to be done to their minutest detail and high level of precision. It was a part of his personality. He was exactly 6 foot 3¼ inches tall. So you can understand from the description of his height. He was exactly 6 foot 3¼ inches. 6 feet 3 inches and a quarter tall, rose at 7 o'clock in the morning, every morning, joined his wife at breakfast to eat one boiled egg cooked for precisely 4 minutes. So even the cooking time of his boiled egg was decided. Cooked for precisely 4 minutes. Cooked for precisely 4 minutes means exactly the egg which he had in breakfast was exactly cooked for 4 minutes. Neither 3 minutes nor 5 minutes. So this was his level of precision. So he got up exactly at 7 o'clock in the morning and joined his wife for breakfast at breakfast, and in breakfast every day he ate one boiled egg which had been cooked for 4 minutes, 2 pieces of toast with a spoonful of Cooper's marmalade, right? So applied Cooper's marmalade in 2 pieces of toast and ate that, and drink 1 cup of China tea. So this was his fixed breakfast. He would then take a hackney carriage from his home in Cadogan Gardens at exactly 8:20 and arrive at the Foreign Office at promptly 8:59. Right? So every day he used to take a hackney's. What is a hackney's carriage? A hackney's carriage is a carriage which is driven by horses, and it was a normally covered kind of a carriage, which was driven as a taxi. Before the invention of these cars and all, what happened? There were these taxis were run in the form of carriages, right? So exactly at 8:20, he would take a hackney's carriage, which was driven by horses, and reach his office, Foreign Office, at 8:59, and returning home on the stroke of 6 o'clock. And the moment it was 6 o'clock in the evening, he would leave his office and come back home. So this is the discipline which he observed in his life. Sir Alexander had been exact from an early age. So this discipline, this precision was a part of his life from early age, from his childhood, and became the only son of a general. And why was he so precise and so exact? Because he was the only son of the general. His father was a general in the military, so he obviously they are very disciplined people, and so he acquired that discipline and exactness from his father. But unlike his father, he chose to serve his queen in the diplomatic service. But Sir Alexander didn't join the military services like his father. Instead, he joined the diplomatic services and served under the Queen of England. Another exacting quality. Exacting means something which requires a lot of effort, right? Some jobs or some profession which is very demanding, which requires a lot of care, lot of attention, lot of effort. So that is exacting. So this profession, military services, was an exacting profession, but the profession which was taken up by Sir Alexander Heathcote, that also was a very exacting profession. Means it involved a lot of effort. He progressed from the shared desk at the Foreign Office in Whitehall to third secretary in Calcutta. So this is how he rose in his career. When he started his job, he worked at the Foreign Office, and he shared a desk in Whitehall. So these are the names of the places where he worked. to the third secretary, and then he was promoted. He became the third secretary, and then he came to Calcutta to second secretary in Vienna, and then after the end of his term, he was again promoted and he was sent as the second secretary to Vienna. I told you that he was a foreign diplomat, so he must be visiting different cities to serve his term, right? So then he went to Vienna, and in Vienna he was promoted as a second secretary to first secretary in Rome, and then again he got promoted and he was sent to Rome, and there he worked as the first secretary to deputy ambassador in Washington, and finally to minister in Peking. So again he received a promotion and he became the deputy ambassador. Then he was posted in Washington, and finally he was promoted to a minister, being a minister, and then he was posted in Peking. Peking is a place in China, present day Beijing, right? Whatever we know as Beijing, that was Peking, basically. He was delighted when Mr. Gladstone invited him to represent the government in China. So he became very excited when he was told by Mr. Gladstone must be his senior, when he was told by Mr. Gladstone that he has to go to China. He's supposed to represent their government of England in China. And he had for some considerable time, why was he so excited and happy when he got an opportunity to go to China? The reason has been given. As he had for some considerable time taken more than an amateur interest in the art of the Ming dynasty. Why? Because from a long period of time, before he got this opportunity to go to Peking as a minister, he had been reading about the Ming dynasty. More than an amateur interest. Amateur means just for the sake of enjoyment, right? Something which you enjoy doing. You don't do it as a profession. You don't do it to earn your living. You just do something because you are interested in doing it, or because you like doing it, or because you enjoy doing it. So that is an amateur interest. But he had developed something which was more than just an amateur interest, right? He was very much inclined to know more about what? The Ming dynasty. The Ming dynasty was in China, right? Is the name of the dynasty in China. So he read a lot about the Ming dynasty, and so the moment he got an opportunity, the moment Mr. Gladstone told me that you have to go and represent our government in China, he became very excited. So that was the reason why he was so happy. This crowning appointment in his distinguished career would afford him what until then he would have considered impossible. So, being in any different country, this would have been impossible for him to go there, to go to China and find more about and understand more about the Ming dynasty and about their culture and what type of rulers and dynasts were there. So, it was not possible for him. But now, because he was going there for an official purpose, he was going there to serve a term, so he would get an opportunity to understand more about something in which he was so much interested, or he was so much, he was so much interested to know. Would afford him what until then he would have considered impossible. An opportunity to observe in their natural habitat some of the great statues. What opportunity he will get now? He will get an opportunity to to have a look at those statues about which he has been reading for a long period of time in their natural habitat. Natural habitat means the natural place where you belong to, the place where you are actually born, the place of your origin. So these are statues, they were made in China. So he will get an opportunity. Till now, he must have seen only the pictures of those statues in the books, because he was very fond of reading about the Ming dynasty. He didn't get any chance to see anything for real. But now, because he was going to China, so he will get an opportunity to see those statues in their natural habitat. To see those statues for real. Some of the great statues, paintings and drawings which he had previously been able to admire only in the books. So till now he had been only able to admire these things, look at these things in the books. So this was the reason of his excitement when he got this opportunity to go to China. When Sir Alexander arrived in Peking, so Sir Alexander arrived in Peking after a journey by sea and land that took his party nearly 2 months. So the journey from England to China took 2 months, approximately 2 months. See, those were not the days of aeroplane, right? And transportation was not so easy. Transport and communication facilities were not so fast. So he took approximately 2 months, and he traveled on land as well as sea, and finally he reached China. He presented his seal patent to the Empress Su Si and a personal letter for her private reading from Queen Victoria. Because he was on an official term, he was there to serve the office as a diplomat from England. So he was supposed to visit the Queen of China. So he went to the Empress. The name of the Empress was Su Si, and he gave the letter, the official letter for her private reading from Queen Victoria. So Queen Victoria, because they are like, she was the Queen of England and she was the Queen of China, so she must have written something and sent a formal letter to Miss Heathcote, and so he presented that letter to the Queen of China, the Empress of China. The Empress, dressed from head to toe in white and gold, received her new ambassador in the throne room of the imperial palace. So in the throne room means where the throne was kept, that big singhasan was kept. So she sat there and she received Mr. Heathcote there. She read the letter from the British monarch while Sir Alexander remained standing to attention. So he was standing there in attention as long as the Queen was reading the letter. The Empress of China was reading the letter, which was sent from the Queen of England. Her Empress Highness revealed nothing of its content to the new minister. So she read the letter, but she didn't say anything about the letter to Mr. Heathcote, only wishing him successful term of office in his appointment. And then he wished him that may you have a successful, may you have a good term in China. She then moved her lips slightly up at the corners, which Sir Alexander judged correctly to mean that the audience had come to an end. And then she lifted her lips, right, slightly up. She moved her lips slightly upward, and that meant, the meaning of this gesture was that now he's supposed to leave the audience. The communication has come to an end, and now he should leave. This is what Sir Alexander interpreted. As he was conducted back through the great hall of the imperial palace by a mandarin in the long coat dress of black and gold. And then a mandarin came. Mandarin, again, those are the, you can say, the diplomats of China. Right? Mandarin is also the official language of China. And Mandarin is also the interpreter and the guide. Here later on, the Mandarin will be used as an interpreter and a guide. Because he was in China, and being an Englishman, he was not aware of the Chinese language. He was not aware of their culture. He was not aware of their tradition. He was not aware of how he is supposed to behave and carry himself there. So he was given a Mandarin. So here basically it means that he was given a guide and an interpreter to help him out. Sir Alexander walked as slowly as possible, taking in the magnificent collection of ivory and jade statues. So a mandarin came there. He was dressed in black and gold color, and he took Sir Alexander along with him. And when Sir Alexander was leaving that imperial palace, everywhere he could see the grand collection of ivory and jade statues. Right? What is jade? Jade is a green colored stone, you can say. So ivory, you know, all of you know that from elephant you get that white thing, hathi daat, wala, that is ivory. Sir Alexander walked as slowly as possible, and Sir Alexander was leaving the palace as slowly as possible. Why? Because he was admiring that magnificent collection of statues which were made of ivory and jade, which were scattered casually around the building. And those statues were just scattered all around the place, around the entire building of that palace. It was scattered casually around the building, much in the way Cellini, who is Cellini and Michelangelo today lie stacked against each other in Florence. Cellini is, he was a Italian sculptor, painter, goldsmith, engraver, and he has written his autobiography also. So Michelangelo was also the same. He was also a sculptor and painter. Michelangelo, you must be knowing. Both of them were Italian. So he was also a painter, sculptor, architect. So it resembled scattered casually around the building, much in the way Cellini and Michelangelo today lie stacked around each other in Florence. Florence is the place in Italy. So there are a lot of masterpieces made by these two great sculptors in Florence. So the way they lie scattered, the way the works of these two great sculptors lie in Florence, similarly the great statues they were lying scattered in the palace. So that is why a comparison has been. As his ministerial appointment was for only 3 years, Sir Alexander took no leave, but preferred to use his time to put the embassy behind him and travel on horseback into the outlying districts to learn more about the country and its people. Because he was so fond of China, he was so much interested in knowing about China that Sir Alexander didn't take any leave, didn't take any rest as long as he was in China. As long as he was supposed to stay in China, he didn't take any leave. Instead, what he did, he used to mount on horseback and travel to the different places. Outlying districts means out the outskirts of Peking. He used to travel on a horseback. And why did he do so? Because he wanted to know more and more about the country, more and more about China, and more about the people of China. On these trips, he was always accompanied by a mandarin. And in these trips, what happened? A mandarin was given to him, and he used to accompany. He used to go along with Sir Alexander Heathcote from the palace staff, who acted as interpreter and guide. And that mandarin, that Chinese person, was an interpreter and guide to help Mr. Heathcote understand the language and the culture.